Richard Petty Motorsports has continued to bring a wooden boxcar to a stock car race. Despite all the history, the cycle of disappointment has summed up the Petty 43 since the 1980s. Even sadder, knowing that an entire generation of NASCAR fans, myself included, have no recollection whatsoever of the 43 car succeeding outside of a rain delay win in 2014. Albeit the Petty team has made some strides over the past year and a half to look less like an on-track abortion and more like a blossoming cup team, one on the cusp of being in the playoff conversation, begging the question as to whether the Petty Blue might just be getting bright for NASCAR's historic number. Every team in the top echelon of NASCAR is first examined by the brave gladiator behind the wheel, tasked with one goal: to get the most out of their chariot. And that is something Erik Jones has done throughout his career to build up to the position he is in today. He did get killed by the TRD Grim Reaper, but he was resurrected by the noble king himself, Richard Petty, after Bubba Wallace left to dunk with MJ and Denny Hamlin at 2311 Racing. Erik Jones would then take over the famed 43 beginning with the Daytona 500. And let's be honest here, Erik Jones is an upgrade over Bubba Wallace. He's a multi-time race winner, Truck Series champion, and Southern 500 winner. Sure, he underperformed in 2020, but that year was a living nightmare for almost everyone. That Jones boy also carried precious experience, having driven some of the best cars NASCAR has to offer. During his tenure, Joe Gibbs Racing won 37 times, including a dominant 2019 campaign. Erik Jones was a major steal for the organization, and while he flew far under the radar all season long, honestly, I forgot he was still in the Cup Series with just how silent he's been. His first season at Richard Petty Motorsports was admirable and certainly underappreciated. Erik Jones earned the highest full season average finish for an RPM driver since Aric Almirola's 17.9 in 2015, the last time the organization was a playoff contender. He also proved to be a driver that takes precious care of his equipment, finishing mid-pack in the laps completed count and only earning 4 DNFs, only one of those coming in the final 26 races. But perhaps the most impressive of all was the fact that Jones only finished 16 races outside the top 20. That's over half the races with a finish 20th or better, something that calls for a Kentucky Fried Chicken meal just like the one Petty had with Ronald Reagan after Win 200. Call it premature, sure, but for an organization that has degraded so much over the past couple decades, getting more top 20s calls for some taste of that sweet victory. Time will tell if Erik Jones ends up becoming a better driver than AJ Allmendinger and Aric Almirola, plus to see if he's finally that driver to guide this team and carry it on his back through the 2020s. But from a driver's standpoint, Richard Petty Motorsports could not be in a better position. One other factor that is above par for Petty norms is the general calling the shots. The crew chief role has commonly been a strong weakness for the RPM team. It wasn't all too long ago that their search for a crew chief was on par with a fast food chain search for workers. Nobody wanted this job, forcing Petty to settle on team engineered for the 2019 season. He, as well as predecessor Drew Buckensturfer, did alright considering the undesirable situation they were put into. But none of those guys genuinely brought in any fresh ideas. Contrast that with Jerry Baxter, who had spent years in the Kyle Busch Motorsports system and was fresh off a championship run in 2019 with Brett Moffitt. Baxter has proved to be quite the Ulysses S. Grant for Richard Petty Motorsports. Both Bubba Wallace and Erik Jones averaged a better average finish than where they started. In both seasons, he led the 43 to 18 lead lap finishes. Now the great Baxter is going back to his NASCAR alma mater to scale back from the grind of the Cup Series. And thanks to Jerry Baxter's excellence in engineering, the next crew chief search wouldn't require throwing in free college tuition or a coupon for goodies, considering this team wasn't as bad of a headache to work for as it was in the late 2010s. Becoming the new general of car number 43 will be Dave Elis. Despite having a carousel of young, experienced blood come in every so few years, Ellis was the rock at the Junior Motorsports number 9 team, advancing to the championship race with all 3 of his drivers, winning it twice with William Byron in 2017 and Tyler Reddick in 2018. He's a utility crew chief and he should mesh well with Erik Jones next season, considering both know what it takes to win and perform in such a prestige racing league, especially as both have been a part of winning organizations. Plus, Ellis does have an advantage over some current Cup crew chiefs, having worked with the composite bodies in Xfinity. Just one of the Swiss Army knife of new features on the brand new game-changing NASCAR Next Generation car. This new era has been hailed as the great engineering reset now that race teams will be paying Benjamin Franklins for chassis rather than building them on their own. That practice has certainly kicked King Richard Petty in the chassis in the past few decades, and even as his organization effectively became RCR Light beginning with the 2018 season. Now, it's still probable the 43 team success will be dependent on how Richard Childress Racing performs next year, given that almost every satellite team is usually a notch behind the mothership. Plus, the engines and people working on the cars are still the same. Regardless, this is as blank of a slate that the NASCAR Cup Series is likely ever going to get, presenting a huge opportunity for teams such as Richard Petty Motorsports that weren't there over the past couple decades. But those upward trends, they're nice and all, but they certainly take a back seat to the dough that's about to start pouring into this organization. The handshaker himself, believe it or not, after all these years, finally gripped hard to get a 26-race, multi-year sponsorship deal with Focus Factor. Now, if you've seen the reactions to this move, a lot of people are already labeling this as the next NASCAR sponsorship scam. Both the Redditors and NASCAR conspiracy theorists alike have already compared this to Nature's Bakery. And I just gotta say, the situation of Focus Factor and Nature's Bakery are not comparable. When Nature's Bakery slashed their Stewart-Haas contract to shreds, they, as a company, weren't even a decade old, and they were just starting to hit store shelves at some of the big box stores. Focus Factor contrasts as an established company with 2 decades on the market, found at almost every convenience store you can think of. Wally World, the big box store that abandoned NASCAR, Walgreens, GNC, etc. The company makes revenues of $47 million and has a gross profit of nearly $26 million, growing over 50% from the previous quarter. The addition of big money gives Richard Petty Motorsports a luxury it has not had in a long time, and that is financial stability. This is the most secure the team has been monetarily since 2017. Before, of course, Smithfield CEO trashed the team's performance publicly and forced them into the brutal rebuild. One that saw companies like Click and Close, Worldwide Technology, Cash App, DoorDash, Columbia, and various other one-off sponsors come and go. None of them sticking around long-term or putting up a good amount of money, meaning that Richard Petty Motorsports, they always had to work out sponsorship almost on a weekly basis to ensure this car gets on the racetrack. And I'm telling you, the organization is going to have a much easier time considering they need to fill out just 10 races of sponsorship instead of the entire season. This newfound big money as well as the organizational improvements come at an interesting time, as it has been heavily reported that Dodge is looking to make its return to NASCAR competition as early as 2023. And assuming Stewart-Haas Racing or another powerhouse team makes the switch to Ram Power, RPM forming a technical alliance with a Dodge team has a lot of positives both for the team and the manufacturer. Richard Petty Motorsports benefits a lot by becoming the second priority at Dodge, getting more money and attention funneled into the team versus the alternative of being the 5th or 6th Chevrolet team. What would make this move enticing to Dodge is the strength in numbers. Remember, Petty still owns 2 NASCAR Cup Series charters. If Dodge is to return, they'll want a good amount of cars to serve as a strength in numbers and potentially an open seat for a development driver. And with the 43 solid sponsorship for the next 2 seasons, it makes it more likely that Richard Petty Motorsports might expand back to 2 teams, even if they cannot find a full season sponsor for this car. Dodge for sure will look at the Richard Petty Motorsports team as the team to grant them a good stable alongside a powerhouse which is undetermined as of now. But if Erik Jones excels, Dave Ellis becomes a solid crew chief, and they are able to compete for a playoff spot, then that makes their odds even more likely of making the switch to a much more competitive situation on paper. Still, considering Richard Petty Motorsports history, you have to stay grounded and realize just what team we're talking about. Knowing the Petty cycle of disappointment, Erik Jones could get a better offer for the 2023 season and Focus Factor might have an opt-out clause, putting Richard Petty Motorsports in another situation where they have to rebuild. However, to answer this video's question, Richard Petty Motorsports as we speak is in good health and is trending upwards as an organization. And with saying that, hell has officially just reached frigid temperatures. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.